Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, the RadFems contend that marriage subordinates women, and they use this as reasoning towards, hey, well, women should never submit. There shouldn't be a subordinate. They should always be on this weird equal footing. And what's interesting is that they never really look at how marriage domesticates a man as well. He's no longer this sort of lone wolf out there going out. He's not really able to be the tomcat, as they say. He is with his woman, and it's the end of delight for him. Now, for us Muslims, zina, unlawful relations, are not allowed. But one of the old slanders against marriage was the old ball and chain, they say. And if you've ever seen an typical American bachelor party, or bachelorette party even, sadly, the males have lots of strippers and drinking and debauchery and partying. The women will have like a penis cake and a male stripper. This is very, very, very common in America. And it's even been in movies. It's something very hedonistic that Americans do. And their argument for this is, well, it's your last night to really have fun before you're stuck to one woman to the day you die, or to the day you get robbed in divorce court. And so you're not going to be allowed to enjoy the fruits of other women, and so you're going to have to toil, fund her lifestyle, and then that's pretty much it, and deal with her nagging. So the red pill sphere will talk about marriage in this very negative light, and even Andrew Tate, who is supposed to be a Muslim, has said, what's the benefit of marriage for men? And they look at marriage as something quite negative. Okay? Now the RadFems say, hey, marriage is a bad deal because it subordinates women, and it plays into the marriage structures that hold up patriarchy, so we best not do it. Okay? They don't really touch upon when trans people get married, gay men, lesbians. It's really odd. They consistently want to tear down heterosexual marriage. Now, as you know, the RadFems reject traditional femininity. So, if you're thinking of an archetype or an icon, it would be a woman who is charismatic, lean, not aggressive, not jarring, not provocative, not abhorrent. The RadFems are more in-your-face, raw, and confrontational, contrarian, armpit hair on the legs. They are more of, if you're obese, don't change, just love what you are. Don't diet and have diet culture. You know, they really embrace letting yourself go. And you know, traditional femininity would say, hey, don't dye your hair blue. You're bleaching it, you're damaging your hair. Embrace your natural colors, or sort of lean into being gray when you're older. Stuff like that. Or if you want to be older and get plastic surgery, at least try to do it right. But the thing is, they don't want to have the domestic roles in marriage for women be upheld. And yet they want the men to still be protectors, pay bills, and not subtract but add. So with women, it's subtract from her duties of cooking, cleaning, intimacy, child rearing, and when it's with the men, it's add to it. So yes, he has to take the car to the DMV, he has to do things around the house, he has to defend the family when you go out and about. He has to feel bad if a woman outside is being harmed and intervene. You have still some of these roles. And so his domestic roles get chores added. The woman, she gets hers subtracted. And, you know, whatever works for each couple for whatever stage they're at. Because when a mom is a new mom versus when she's breastfeeding versus when she's like 5 months pregnant versus 8 months pregnant, there's going to be a transition. The age of the kids dictate a lot. So that's important for how domestic roles change over time and as the years of the relationship go on. And so RadFems, they want to dismantle all that, where women are more domestic at home, homebodies, homemakers. They really want her sort of out and about in Bali and doing God knows what. It's quite different. Now they claim it's all about choice, but I've had plenty of RadFems say that I have no ambition because I decided to put off college and careerism to focus on family and having children. And a lot of RadFems have extended adolescence. What I mean by that is they think a 20-year-old woman is like a baby. She's like 12. Okay, and they think a 12-year-old, if you make them do some type of chores, this is like horrible. You know, it's odd. They want the girls to kind of become less domestic, and then they want the boys to do more domestic chores. So it's not real equality. They're not advocating that both the son and the daughter, for example, sit on their butts and do nothing, and make the dad do everything while the wife gets her nails done. Right? It's sort of like they're just shifting, without stating it, who has to do what. And no matter which way you square it, Islam has a good balance of letting women keep their femininity by not forcing them to free mix with men and disavowing, and by encouraging women to remain feminine. So, as you know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, cursed men who imitate women and women who imitate men. And it has, Surah An-Nisa has placed men as the caretakers of women. It's their responsibility. They get more inheritance because they have more financial burdens. Whereas a woman's money is her money, and a man can't demand that she pay 50-50 this, 50-50 that, because it's a noble charge that Allah has placed upon the shoulders of men, right? And so it's important for us to look at how is the RadFem philosophy absurd, and how can we explain that to people who might be tempted by the RadFem philosophy. So I would approach it and let a lot of these women know that there's nothing wrong with being, let's use their term, subordinate. When you go to work, there's hierarchy. There's always going to be hierarchy. You're equal before Allah in terms of having the opportunity to do good deeds, and different roles to find different functions and different needs. So it's not necessarily about who's better, who's worse, but how do you keep everything going? You think of a ship. Someone's got to do different duties on that ship in order to make things run smoothly. It's not necessarily about who is more disposable and who is less disposable. A car with not enough wheels isn't going to really go. So the household is very similar. So it's important to understand that, as the RadFems say, marriage subordinates women, that we point out that marriage changes men as well, and often for the better. Instead of them being wild, chasing tail, thinking they have some type of parasitic relationship with their OnlyFans model, whatever, that they turn their attention and directional focus towards their wife and family. Aimless bachelors who are sexually frustrated change once they get married and become domesticated. You just have to work on keeping the spice alive. So marriage can also help give men more motivation to get their priorities right. Instead of drinking and sitting around watching the game. Yeah, I understand some married men do that, but it changes them. So domestic roles are going to change for both the man and the wife as time goes on, and that's fine, and you embrace it. And depending on your support system and your culture, you're going to have different requirements as well, and also what you have access to. So it's really quite fascinating, all the different variations that exist, and how RadFems, if they think it's patriarchal, want to try to distort that. And I've been blocked by, countless RadFems. They're very frigid in terms of hearing any dissenting view. They block really easy, but they are very loud. Like, they're just very in your face with their content. They act tough, but they got very little bite. And once they can see you start going over on them, they block in order to save face. And so they're not really wise, I would argue. And so it's important for us as Muslims, but also revert Muslims who live both the Western life and now have tried to transition to the Islamic life, share our perspectives, because as we get older we learn, and the more I see the absurdity of the RadFems and how much damage they've caused in society, the more I see, like, okay, we have a lot of work to do in order to repair some of their damages. And I think it's important to recognize how women are not trying to be all like Cece in The Color Purple, where you're just getting beat on and you cook and your wife status isn't very good and your husband is not respectful. They use examples like that and then paint a broad brush upon marriage as a whole, when in reality, if the patriarchal system was good, it would would rescue women like that. And like, we would have a male family member to defend us, to protect us and guide us and sustain us. Without that, we just have more aimlessness, more broken families. So the patriarchal order has been the order for quite some time, and it's been broken down since really hardcore acceleration since the 70s. So 70s, 80s, 90s, 1000s, 2010, 2020. So, we're going on like 60 years, give or take. And we've seen how many women have divorced, been more lonely, how many women resort to making money through prostitution because of single moms. So we've begun to notice the shift in just how women behave and how everything's come full circle, and how, you live with someone, you have duties towards one another. It's fascinating when you see how RadFems want to destroy marriage structures, which is, at its core, men want to have intimacy with the women they help provide for, and they want to be wanted by their woman. And RadFems argue this is a lot of oppression, and there's going to be awkward times in every relationship, but the important part is to repair that, not let it get too horrible. But suddenly, with the rise in single women wanting to live in apartments and not really get married, and they can't afford rent on their single income, you see this sort of in Canada and Scotland, where it's the landlords, there's like a setup between women offering their services to the landlord in exchange for a deduction in rent or free rent at whole. Which, business wise, if the rent is $2,000, you're not gonna have a 30 days worth of like, you're not gonna get your money. You're not gonna get your money because for 10 minutes, like, how much is this woman required to give you? This is a very dumb exchange. Those women are really getting the higher end of the deal, even though they're sinning. The fact that some guy would be such a loser that he would withgo that amount of money for 10 minutes of fun 5-6 times a month is absurd. It just kind of goes to show you that those women are running game on very lonely men, and that even though a man can have money and property, he can still be under the claws of a very domineering woman. And I just find that fascinating, how the feminists encourage women to go out on their own in an economy that isn't good, and they say sleeping with your husband is oppression, but then you look at how sometimes they say, adult content and selling your body is not good. It is oppression because it subordinates women, because RadFems are not really into those as much as the liberal feminists concerning sex work and stuff like that. So you see this shift of, is it empowering for women to exchange their body to a landlord for rent? They see it as empowering, as a go-getter, as business savvy, as clever. Remember, Andrew Tate told Bonnie Blue, that nasty disease fest, that she's smart because she doesn't give it away for free. He literally said that in the interview. If you watch my video on it, you'll see the timestamps that I discuss. But he calls her smart because she charges for her services. So that's feminism for a circle, is where you don't give it to your husband, but you give it to someone for money. Recall, though, that a lot of RadFems said a wife is a pick-me-sha if she gives it to her husband and she likes having intimacy, that a husband should get used to the woman not giving it. Now, that's interesting. So they argue that a husband who loves and takes care of you, has children with you, is owed nothing, but the landlord who is giving you a deduction in rent, he is owed something, and if you violate that contract, he can kick you out. So you have more loyalty to your landlord than your husband, or your future husband. Very quite strange with their agendas here. And so you can see how the different branches of feminism, they really are a hodgepodge of contradictory philosophies. And a lot of liberal feminists will say it's all about choice. Not really, because I've had them tell me that I have no ambition because I put my kids first. I gave up college, gave up work. Yeah, they say, you have no drive, you have no grit, you have no passions, and they see it as very loser mentality. And they rather travel, have a cat and a house plant, or use surrogacy, even stuff like that. So, again, it's fascinating to see the contradictions left, right, and center when it comes to the different branches of feminists, but especially the RadFems in particular. Because as they want to dismantle the patriarchal institutions, they also want to change domestic roles, and their domestic roles that they try to change aren't equal. So it's not that the husband rakes the leaves and then next week she rakes the leaves. It's not that he carries the TV up the stairs and then the next time they carry something heavy, she carries it up the stairs. It's not real true equality. It's her adding chores while minimizing her participation. And so you can totally see how this has created too much antagonism between men and women, and then it has evolved the discourse online, and the online world has bled into the dating apps, and then this has black-pilled, as you can call it, it's made more people cynical and nihilistic. And so Islam has a solution. Islam encourages marriage, and we have hadiths about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like divorce, and we have great marriage advice through the scholars, and so much. We got lots to work with. Whereas the RadFems don't have a whole lot of options and solutions for women who are struggling. Their solution is divorce, say he's a narcissist, claim he's abusing you, and drag him through the course. You may think I'm being a bit exaggerative, but when you study the RadFems for so long, their number one solution they go to is divorce. They really like to throw away relationships quite easy, and I find this to be quite sad. And again, as they attack marriage as a structure, they degrade its value overall, so walking away from it isn't seen as something important because it's nothing special anyways. They're not spiritual, they're not religious, so they don't see it as sort of this divine, beautiful consummation and union. It's more of a transaction. And even then, the transaction for them is like based on these very narrow things, and on her whims and desires, not on something more of a moral compass and grander blueprint of life. Let me know what you think. But there's nothing wrong with being a subordinate in your relationship. It doesn't mean you don't have a voice. It just means that you need to make sure that you're with someone who is a good leader and can handle stress, and where you can still have communication, but you don't always fight tooth and nail to get in front of him all the time. And where you take in each other's voices, but you let the ball be in his court, and you learn how to work together and understand that, you know, will you get tired of always being the leader, and will you even have a libido for your husband if you're always choosing everything, making all the decisions? You know, it's quite common for women to lose attraction to their husbands once they've been like too just effeminate, too feckless, too lethargic. They are not really focused, they're not driven, they're really undecided, they're kind of just like a floating blob of consciousness. It's not really something exciting in someone like that. So their dismantling and rejection process is really creating more problems for them, and it's important we don't let their twisted and demented and fractured ideology pervert and distort our Muslim sisters' minds. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe. Enjoy the vlog.